But let's talk about this. Dallas would have received Killian Hayes and Bojan. The Pistons would have got back Tim Hardaway and JaVale McGee. Would you have liked a trade like that for the Pistons?
I don't really think we have a need for JaVale McGee, but he would be a good veteran presence.
Yeah.
I
What
could
about Tim
try.
Hardaway?
I could try to talk my way into Tim Hardaway, but he's such a streaky shooter that I think I would rather keep Bojan because he's shown me that he can be a consistent shooter, and he's a veteran, and he's on a pretty good deal. I think if the Mavericks would have thrown in a first, I think the Pistons probably would have made this trade because, like, on its surface, it's not a terrible trade, but they weren't even willing to, throw in a first. I think the Pistons asked for their 2027 first round pick in a few years, but the Mavericks, they really don't have that many first round draft picks. Like their draft capital that they have, it's bare. They've invested so much into their team, and they're like in a win now mode. So if they do trade for someone, they want to hold on to that first round pick. They're not gonna try to trade for a Bojan when maybe another star becomes available. You never know. But I thought the offer to me was a garbage offer. I mean, unless you're throwing draft capital, then that's a conversation. But for me personally, I don't really get excited about a JaVale McGee or a Tim Hardaway Jr.
Yeah, because I don't see, like you were saying, I don't really see the need for JaVale McGee on this team. I figured that would probably be like a buyout guy, like they just waive him at some point, kind of like they did with Nerlens Noel last season. And you already have Burks on the team. I feel like Tim Hardaway's kind of redundant. I don't know. I mean, he gives you another ball handler. He's a streaky shooter. I just don't know where he fits with all the guard depth they have. Like, we keep talking about how loaded the front court is with players, but I mean, the guard depth, I mean, you got 5 guys that look like they could get minutes right away, and that's Cade, Ivy, Burks, why am I blanking on his name? Monte Morris and Sasser. That's 5 guys that look like they could all get minutes for the Pistons this year. And then you throw in Tim Hardaway into the mix. I know he can play that 3 spot, but you still have the Soar. You have Joe Harris. You have Isaiah Livers. It's loaded all across the board. I think Tim Hardaway would beat a few of those guys out anyway, but I'm with you. I don't love this trade. I don't love this trade. And I keep seeing fans want to throw in either like a Josh Green or a Jaden Hardy, but like, where do those guys fit on this team, though? You know what I'm saying? Like, I love having young talent, but I mean, at some point, you kind of got to ask yourself, like, how is this all going to work? Is there enough minutes to go around?
It's so funny. Some Pistons fans are like, dude, we have 6 guards, but let's go trade for JJ Hardy.
Yeah.
It's just like, you guys, like, we have so many guards on this roster. I don't think the Pistons are calling teams asking for more guards because I think they have their core players that they want to see, like Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, Monte Morris. You have Killian Hayes still on the roster. Sasser, who had a phenomenal G League Summer League game today. I mean, we have a lot of guards. I think if the Pistons do trade Bojan, they may look for a power forward, like a legitimate power forward. Now, I don't know if Pascal Siakam would be too much, but I feel like he would fit seamlessly right now. Like, if you had Pascal Siakam as your starting power forward right now, I think a lot of Pistons fans would be excited. But I bet you would have to trade a whole lot just to get a Siakam from Toronto right now.
I mean, I think it's going to have to be to a contending team, too. You're not going to trade Bojan to a rebuilding team.
Yeah.
You're going to have to get into the mix with like the Portland Trail Blazers and whoever they decide to throw, whoever they decide to trade Dame into. There might be a 3-team trade there. But, I mean, I talked about it last podcast. I'd rather get draft capital for Bojan. I think that's still on the table. Maybe not an early first-round pick, but like a late first-round pick, late 20s. That seems like that could be on the table for Bojan. I mean, it's not that bad of a contract for a 20-point scorer, guy that was almost in the 50, 40, 90 club this past season, was flirting with it for a little while before he went down. Bojan, he's a steady player, man. He's going to be in the NBA for a few more years doing his thing, spacing the floor for any star that needs him. I still think there's a trade on the table for Bojan. Especially with the way Asor Thompson has played, I really think the Pistons will try to move on from him. If they do keep him and he is playing for the Pistons all of next year, I'm not going to hate it. I think he has a ton of value and he can open the floor for all those young guys. So I'm happy with it either way, but I would rather get some draft capital if he is going to be traded.
Yeah, I mean, there's some people thinking Asor may be the starter. Like, he may be your starting small forward, and Bojan comes off the bench. Like, I don't know if they're going to throw him straight into the fire, but I know he showed, like, what he's capable of in the summer league. But I think Bojan will be dealt. I just don't know when, and I don't really know what, the Pistons... Like, 2 first-round picks is ridiculous.
Yeah.
It really is. I mean, come on, man. Like, you're not getting 2 firsts for Bojan. Come on.
No, but I mean,
you always set your price really high. So if they come back with 1 first-round pick, like, oh, we got a first, like, but I just don't know, like, what his value is on the open market. Like, I'm surprised Killian Hayes was thrown in that offer. That tells me a lot.
Who do you think would get moved? I mean, I don't know. I don't want to get into too much Killian Hayes, dog. I just hope if he is traded, they find the right home for him. That's what I'll say about that. But for Bojan, if he's here, I'm rooting for him. If he's traded, that's awesome. Let's get some draft capital. And I brought this up before, and I'm glad other Pistons fans are starting to talk about it. Bojan playing the 4 and Asor playing the 3. Maybe that's the starting lineup, maybe not. But, yeah, they're going to get cooked defensively for a little bit. That's fine. But he's not going to play all 48 minutes. He'll be fine. I think the offense and the space he creates outweighs the negative him on defense. And plus, all you got to do is just funnel him into Duren. That's all. That's all you got to do. He's going to clean it up for you.
I've seen not only you talk about that, I've seen Motor City Hoops, Bryce talk about that. I've seen Wes talk about that. I've been biting my tongue on that for probably like 5 days.
Yeah, I know.
I would hate that lineup. We would get cooked. I'd rather start Livers at the 4 at that point. Livers and Asor is your 3 and 4. But I know we're getting ahead of ourselves. It's only freaking July, and we haven't even had a full preseason yet to see how these guys have developed and learned Monty's new system. But it's interesting that the Mavs tried to pull a trade off like this, and it's interesting that the Pistons were okay with Killian being part of a trade. I think that kind of speaks volumes. We talked about it last week that, Killian may be shopped.
Yeah.
And it's a real possibility he does get moved this offseason, but we're going to have to wait and see what does happen. I do think there is going to be at least one more trade.